This is episode 96 of Stand Up. I am Pete Dominick, and joining me today, I have former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirschner, comedian and the best Trump impersonator in the country, J.L. Kovan, and comedian and one of my favorite people to chat with, Christian Finnegan. All that right now. Let's roll. Somebody said let's roll to me on social media the other night, and in a kind of like inspiring way. And so I'm using it now. I like that. I don't know whether or not that guy said it on that plane on September 11th or not, but I always like to believe that he did when they got up to save the plane. So anyway, I think I'm going to use it. I hope that's not annoying because I like it. So thanks to whoever that was. If you're that person, reach out to me and I'll give you credit. Thank you to all the new supporters on Patreon. Some great new subscriptions. Very excited about it. Every day they're coming in. Seriously, it is so awesome that we've built this community here of over 550 people and growing each and every day. Tell me what it is you like about it, who you like, and I'm starting to hand out these regular slots on the show so that people can join me weekly, and folks really want to do it. People like talking to me, and people love this audience and hearing from you, so let me know who you want me to have on a regular basis, and if I haven't had somebody on, reach out and let me know. Derek says he's number 83. Patron, subscriber number 83, and that I should have Josh Marshall on of Talking Points Memo. It's a great idea, Derek. I've always loved Josh's stuff. We have a lot of mutual friends, but I've never had him as a guest on the show. So I will definitely reach out to Josh Marshall. I need more women on the show. I need Mitt Romney's Binders of Women. Remember that? Remember when that was the most sexist thing that an almost president said? Anyway, I definitely need more women on the show, so suggest female guests and women of color, men of color, any minorities, people who aren't represented as much in media. I really want to obviously have them on this program, give them an opportunity, and for more important reasons, get their perspective, which is not often gotten or given by me or a bunch of white dudes. Not political correctness, it's learning from diversity and ethnicity and experience. So let me know who you like in different categories as well. Okay, let's do the show. How about that? I got 3 great guests today, and I'm really excited about it. Had a really wonderful, meandering conversation with Christian Finnegan, who is my 3rd guest on today's show. We talked about all kinds of mundane things. I always like to talk about the mundane. How do you sleep? How do you bathe? How do you eat? It was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to hearing from you on that. Also, J.L. Kovan on the show today, literally one of the funniest guys I know. Nobody does a better Trump impression in terms of the voice and the mannerisms, but it's the content of what he says as well. I mean, I can throw anything at that guy, and he knows how to make it funny, and he did that today, and that's also live on Twitter if you want to watch it at my timeline and JL's timeline. But first, I want to get to Glenn Kirschner. Glenn is just a force of nature. He is a really smart, tough, interesting, provocative guy who served his country for over 30 years. And now he is out there really more than anything else as a media commentator. He's got his own YouTube page that he just launched. It's already really popular. And we talked about all these legal issues that are important, unpacked the situation with Michael Flynn, how that's developed, the other crimes that are going undercover because of the pandemic coverage, and a bunch of other things as well. So let's get to it, shall we? Here now is my conversation with Glenn Kirschner, who you probably know from his many appearances. He's on MSNBC all the time when the issue was Trump's crimes, especially the Russia investigation. You probably recognize him from that. But he's not doing a lot. None of those legal analysts are on right now because it's all about the pandemic. But let's get to it right now. He's joining me. He's got an awesome YouTube page. He's on Twitter at Glenn Kirschner 2. This is the Kirschner Report on Stand Up with Glenn Kirschner right now. Okay, he is joining me now, one of my all-time favorite legal analysts, the guy who I think should be our next Attorney General, Glenn Kirschner. Glenn, of course, is a former federal prosecutor for 30 years. He had a career doing that, working for the federal government. He's a former JAG officer. He's an MSNBC legal analyst, and now he's a YouTuber. You have launched a YouTube channel to host your commentary, and it's great, Glenn. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Pete, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm a little I'm upset and I'm jealous here because you spent your entire career working for the government and toiling in courtrooms and seeking justice and not, I would imagine, looking for any credit, but doing it because you thought it was the right thing to do. Then you jump into this media career and you're a star on MSNBC. You have a massive following on social media. And now you have a YouTube channel that you launched like a month ago. And all of it is bigger and better than anything I have. And I spent my life seeking attention in comedy clubs. And it's just not right. It's not fair. And I'm pretty pissed off about your success in media, what with the fact that I've been doing it for so long. Anything to say for yourself?
You know what, Pete? I was never on social media one day in my 30 years with the federal government. As you say, I kind of toiled in anonymity inside courtrooms. The only time I would ever speak to the media is if my U.S. attorney told me I could do a courthouse steps press conference after I either won or lost the case. And trust me, I did both. That would be the only time I talk on TV or talk to reporters. And, then I retired from the government on June 1st of 2018. And I thought, okay, I got to figure out now, if I'm going to start talking on TV for NBC News and MSNBC, what this social media thing is all about. Because frankly, I was the kind of guy who felt like, if I attached a document to an email, I was like, king of electronic media. That was about as sophisticated as I got. So I couldn't be more thrilled, quite frankly, that people have apparently been interested in what I say on Twitter. And now, as you say, I launched a YouTube channel. And I got to tell you, Pete, I did that really born of frustration because the Trump administration is criming every day of the week. And because coronavirus coverage is 24/7, and I understand that, that's what we're all contending with. And frankly, I want to see the healthcare heroes celebrated on TV every minute of every day when they're not treating patients. I think that the Trump administration is getting away with even more crime, abuse, and corruption because we're not shining a light on it, on TV every day. So that's why I am also now posting almost daily legal segments on YouTube, just trying to tackle Trump's crime of the day.
So let's get into some of what you've been talking about on your YouTube page. But again, I think that's important what you said about the lack of coverage on the Trump administration and the legal, things that they're doing. You said criming. Like what are we missing given the vacuum that the pandemic and the virus and the death and destruction has created? What are we missing?
We're missing pretty much the abuse du jour by Trump and company. A couple of days ago, it was Donald Trump ordering Tyson's Chicken and other, meat-producing companies to send their sick employees back into the production facilities to work with our country's food source. And to add insult to injury, Pete, he said, and what I'm going to do is give the fat cat board members and Tyson executives immunity so that if anybody dies as a result of what I am ordering here, they can't even be sued in court. What is Trump trying to get out of that? Well, he's trying to get fried chicken, for one, but he's also trying to get these fat cat Tyson executives to, fill his campaign coffers for his reelection campaign. It's like evil on top of evil on top of evil. And all of that has come and gone in like a third of a news cycle.
But to be clear, what's happening is they're forcing these low-wage workers to go back in and perform, by the way, they're normally dangerous jobs because that's a dangerous job, working in a meat plant oftentimes. Oftentimes, by the way, undocumented immigrants or legal immigrants doing that work. He's forcing them to go back to work, and he's making sure that the company itself won't have any legal liability if anybody gets sick from the virus and dies. Is that what is happening?
Yeah, it's not just let them eat cake. It's like take the sick folk, the poor folk, the people of color, let them make the cakes, let them die doing it, let them poison our country's food supply. And by the way, Tyson's executives get a pass. They can't be held accountable for any of it.
And you're saying that should not be legal. They should not be allowed to provide that kind of protection for the executives. What's the legal term?
Immunity.
Yeah.
We all are responsible. Any employer is responsible for creating a safe work environment. And frankly, a presidential executive order or a presidential deployment of the Defense Production Act, was a fancy term to say the president can tell manufacturers do this or do that in the time of our national emergency. The president ordering these things, in my opinion as a lawyer, will not give these Tyson executives immunity when their workers continue to get sick, continue to struggle, and continue to die, because this case is going to be taken up in court someday, and judges will not endure or endorse a president ordering people back into an unsafe work environment, potentially to their death.
All right, so that's one issue. Let me talk to you about another one that I'm kind of confused about, and I followed it, but then I forget it. And obviously, you've been talking about this and know a lot about this one. It's Mike Flynn. The president has been tweeting about it. Why is this back in the news? Some new documents have come out, and is there a scandal here? What am I missing? Why is the president crowing about this on social media? Why is his right-wing, media supporters also talking about vindication and that the FBI has committed crimes? He's calling them dirty, filthy cops and things like that. The president is on Twitter. What do we need to know about Mike Flynn?
Yeah, let's walk through this one, Pete. Yeah. So the president today is making statements about, the upper echelons of the FBI are these dirty, filthy, corrupt cops. They set up Michael Flynn, and Michael Flynn is about to be completely exonerated. So first of all, let me not bury the lead. That is patently and transparently false. And here's why. Michael Flynn, as the national security advisor, got caught talking dirty on the phone to the Russians. Now, in prosecutor speak and police speak, when we say somebody's talking dirty, that just means we have surveillance on their calls, on the Russians' calls, not Mike Flynn's calls, but we happen to catch Flynn talking to the Russians about things he shouldn't have been, about potentially lifting sanctions. He had no business talking about those things. So he was talking dirty to the Russians on the phone.
To be clear, we were surveilling the Russians as we do, and we all of a sudden were like, oh my God, that's our guy. We're listening. Right. That's what happened, not that we were tapping Flynn.
Exactly. So, here's the thing. When the national security advisor is talking with foreign adversaries, quite frankly, about things he has no business, no authorization to talk about, that is an enormous national security concern. So the FBI did exactly what the FBI should do. They went and they interviewed Mike Flynn about that. Now, here is what Trump claims makes them dirty cops. They talked about the interview before they approached Mike Flynn. Can I tell you, in 30 years, Pete, every time we were going to conduct a consequential interview in a criminal investigation, whether it was of a target or an important witness, you know what we did? We talked about it. We strategized. How do we want to approach this witness? How do we want to go at this suspect? So we maximize the information that we think we need to move forward in our criminal investigation. So here is what came out about that FBI chatter prior to the Flynn interview. They were talking to each other about things like, listen, should we just go in and talk to Flynn and lay out all our cards and our evidence and try to have him tell us the truth? Or should we just go in and ask him open-ended questions and let him lie if he's inclined to lie? Should we think about prosecuting him? Should we think about whether he's somebody who should lose his job, who should be fired? What's our goal? What's our priority here in the investigation and in the interview we're about to conduct with Mike Flynn? That's exactly what we do before interviews. So, and I want to circle back to the firing or having him lose his job piece in a minute, because that's important, I think.
Go ahead.
So then what they did is they decided to go in and do exactly what they should have done. This is interviews 101. They asked them open-ended questions. They didn't go in and say, General Flynn, we know you were talking to the Russians on the phone. We've got it. We've got recordings of it. We know you were talking about things you shouldn't have, though, and feeding him the information so he could then adjust his story accordingly. We don't do that. What we do is we go in and we say, have you ever talked to the Russians on the phone about sanctions? What does Mike Flynn do? He lies to them. And he lies to them knowingly and intentionally and voluntarily, not being set up and not being entrapped. What does that do? That makes him a subject for Russian blackmail. That compromises him as the national security advisor, and it puts us all at risk. Once Michael Flynn decided to lie to the FBI didn't set him up. They didn't do anything but ask him the question. And frankly, some people are like, well, they didn't read him his rights. You don't have to read somebody their rights in what we call a non-custodial interview. You only have to read somebody their Miranda rights, their right to remain silent, their right to a lawyer, if they're under arrest, if they're in custody. Otherwise, there is no obligation, legal, ethical, or moral, to read somebody their rights before you ask them questions if they're not under arrest. What the FBI did, Pete,
they don't have to answer the questions, though.
Well, he could have said, I'm not talking to the FBI about that. You think that would have set off some alarm bells for the national security advisor refusing to answer questions of the FBI? But right. Yes, he could have said, I'd rather not talk about this. But instead, he chose to lie. When you lie, what does that tell us? It's a consciousness of guilt. You know that you are covering up your own wrongdoing. Because if he had no reason to lie, if he thought, you know what, I was allowed to talk to the Russians about the possible removal of sanctions, he would have just told the FBI that. He had to lie about it because he knew he was wrong in the first instance, all of which makes him compromised. So then what happens? Michael Flynn walks into court, having been caught, raises his right hand, swears to tell the truth, looks Judge Emmett Sullivan in the eye in D.C. Federal District Court and says, Judge, I'm guilty. I was at some of the Michael Flynn court hearings. He said, I'm guilty. I have no defense. I knew lying to the FBI was wrong. I have the transcript right in front of me, Pete. Judge Sullivan went the extra mile and say, do you want to challenge anything about the way the FBI approached or interviewed you? He said, no, Your Honor. I knew, and this is a quote, I knew lying to the FBI was wrong. Judge Sullivan asked him a follow-up question. Do you believe you were entrapped? Flynn's answer in a word was no. So he pled guilty because he was guilty. And Pete, here's the thing. A judge is not allowed to accept your guilty plea unless the judge in open court with the defendant under oath establishes that it was...
You disappeared. You're back.
I'm back. That it was knowing, it was intelligent, it was voluntary, and most importantly, it was supported by the evidence that has been offered to the court to show that he actually committed a crime. It's a rigorous process in court to get a judge to accept the guilty plea. Mike Flynn did all of that. And now some notes bubble up that the FBI was talking about how to approach, how to go at Mike Flynn in the interview. Should we get him to tell the truth? Should we let him lie? Should we look toward prosecution? Should we see if he should be dislodged, if he should be fired as national security advisor? And here's where I want to circle back to that piece. Because, again, as a 30-year prosecutor, I didn't often talk about with my agents or my detectives or my investigators whether this particular witness or target that we are going to interview, whether one of our goals should be, do we want to see if we can get him fired? Do we want to see if he should lose his job? So people will see that note that was released and say, really? That seems a little strange. I'm raising an eyebrow at that. And in ordinary investigation, I would raise an eyebrow too, because whether a suspect of mine gets fired from his or her job, that's a collateral consequence of the prosecution. I don't even consider that generally when I am having these tactical discussions about how do we interview a particular person. However, I've never interviewed the national security advisor when the stakes are so high that maybe one of the things the FBI needs to be cognizant of is, as we interview this guy, should we be thinking about whether he's unfit to be national security advisor, compromising the safety and security of the United States? That's why that's an outlier, but it's not inappropriate in the context of this investigation and this, target who is at the upper echelons of the national security apparatus for the country.
At the very
the
beginning
FBI did nothing wrong.
At the beginning of the administration, the timing as well. I mean, it was like, January, I believe.
Yeah, the FBI did nothing wrong. Frankly, they did everything right.
Okay, what about this idea of there being a perjury trap?
There's no such thing as a perjury trap.
What's
Can
that?
I tell you there's no such thing as a perjury trap. People misunderstand that phrase. So here's what people think is a perjury trap. I have been investigating my case in the grand jury, and I have developed a whole bunch of evidence that informs the interview I'm about to conduct. So I've interviewed Pete's friends and neighbors and loved ones. I've gone through his cell phone. I've gone through his social media accounts. I've gone through his laptop. Maybe I've even surveilled him a little bit to see what he's been up to. I know everything about him, and I know where the weak spots are and the danger zones are. So I know where you might be apt to lie. And then I sit down with you, Pete, and I ask those hard questions.
Do you use My Pillow in your bed, Pete? Yes or no? You know whether or not I use a My Pillow.
And maybe you're in cahoots with the My Pillow guy. I know you wouldn't be, but maybe that's a danger zone for you. And you think you can get away with a lie and telling the truth you believe is more damaging to you, you're going to lie. But people will say that's a perjury trap. No, it's not. You don't have to be Houdini to escape a perjury trap. You just have to tell the truth, even if the truth incriminates you in another way. That's all a perjury trap is. It's not nefarious. It's not unethical. It is simply asking the hard questions that you know the answers to, and the suspect may very well lie to conceal something else, and he does lie. Bingo, you got perjury, you got pressure, you got a criminal charge. Usually we do that, Pete, as a vehicle to work our way up the criminal food chain. We'll take that guy down, we'll charge him with perjury, we'll flip him, and we'll work our way up. That's all a perjury trap is. There's no such thing as an unethical, unlawful, nefarious perjury trap unless you falsify evidence.
Refresh my memory, though, about Mike Flynn. It was my recollection is that the president fired him because it came out that he, Mike Flynn, his national security advisor, lied to his vice president.
Yeah, Pete, if you have the president's tweet, I believe it was maybe January of 17, you can pull it up.
Yeah.
It says, and this is pretty darn near a quote because I read it earlier today, General Michael Flynn lied to the vice president and the FBI, and I had to fire him. He has now pled guilty to those lies in court. That's the president's tweet. That is at a time, Pete.
Here it is. I had to fire General Flynn because December 2nd, 2017. Wow, it was December. I thought it was January. I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies. It's a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide. The tweet is, I don't remember all this, but if there was nothing to hide, then why did he lie?
Because there was everything to hide. That last sentence is pure hogwash. But what does the president say? He lied. He lied to the FBI. He lied to the vice president. I had to fire him, and he pled guilty in court for lying. Now, the president's like, well, he didn't have reason to lie. But the president acknowledged that he did lie. So that was at a moment in time, Pete, if we all think back fondly to when there was some adult in the room that could cajole or convince the president to be this truthful, even if only fleetingly, the first 3/4 of that tweet is the truth. So for him now to say he was set up, he never lied, it's all hogwash.
What about the issue with him working for a foreign country as a was it unregistered with Turkey?
Agent, yeah.
He
was investigated for that previously, and that's in part why the Obama administration tried to counsel the Trump team, do not hire this man. He's untrustworthy. And Pete, I was in the courtroom when Emmett Sullivan, a lion of the DC federal circuit court, the federal district court, somebody I had cases in front of when I was a prosecutor. I have nothing but admiration and respect for him. He said, and he knew a lot more about what Flynn did than everybody else because he had documents sent to him in camera for review that the public was never privy to. And here is darn near a quote from Emmett Sullivan during the aborted sentencing hearing. He said, "Defendant Michael Flynn, you have disgraced everything this flag stands for." And he pointed over his right-hand shoulder because there's an American flag behind his bench. And he said, "And you arguably sold out your country." And he asked the government, could he be charged with treason? I mean, it was mind-blowing how rightly angry Emmett Sullivan was for a general and a national security advisor to have lied to the FBI and sold out his country in the process.
So why then isn't he in jail or going to jail? What happened with his legal case?
So he filed a motion for a new trial. He's trying to withdraw his plea. This gets tricky and it gets down to the legal weeds, but let me do this because I think it's important.
Go ahead.
First of all, for whatever reason, the judge is taking a long time to decide if Michael Flynn should be allowed to withdraw his guilty plea. And I don't know that the judge is going to be inclined to let him withdraw his guilty plea because he stated under oath that he was guilty and he had no reason to challenge it. Right. And the reason he's challenging it now is all politics and Fox News and Trump nonsense. So here's the real problem. If you withdraw a guilty plea, ordinarily, you know what that means? I, as the prosecutor, if you tried to plead guilty in my case and then you withdrew it, I now get to charge you with every flippin' crime you ever committed. I get to charge your son in Michael Flynn's case, because remember, they agreed not to charge him if Flynn pled guilty. I get to charge your son. I get to charge, and I get to bury you under the prison for the rest of your life for all of the crimes you committed. Remember, he was allowed to only plead guilty to one false statement charge for lying to the FBI. Here is the really hard part of this. Because Bill Barr, the president's lawyer and fixer and protector, is in place, if Michael Flynn is allowed to withdraw his guilty plea by Judge Emmett Sullivan, ordinarily that means he gets charged with everything he's done. In a Bill Barr Department of Justice, it may mean that all charges get dismissed and Mike Flynn goes scot-free. That is the real danger of having a corrupt attorney general.
So am I getting this wrong? Is that he, what is the term, reapplied, wants to have his case reheard because of who the attorney general now is?
Oh, he doesn't have a legal basis to withdraw his plea. He has a PR basis to try to withdraw his plea because he's got Barr in his corner, he's got Trump in his corner, and I'll bet he senses that if I can withdraw my plea, they're going to dismiss the case outright.
Also, Trump could just pardon him, right?
Oh, yeah, and he will at some point. Whether if he loses the election in November, I predict it's going to be pardon-palooza for Manafort, for Stone, for
if he loses
Flynn.
November, the lame duck, that November and December, amongst other things that he is going to do, it will be issuing pardons to everybody.
And Pete, he will be issuing prospective pardons, exactly as Nixon did. Ford did.
What's that?
To Nixon. Nixon wasn't charged with any crime when Gerald Ford pardoned him. He pardoned him prospectively or prophylactically by saying, I'm going to pardon you for any crimes you committed as part of the Watergate affair so nobody can ever charge you. He was never charged. You're allowed to pardon somebody. Basically, it's giving them immunity. You can never be charged for the following crimes because I'm pardoning you. He will do that for his entire family, who knows how many of his cabinet members, who knows how many of his Republican enablers in Congress. It will be a pardon-palooza if he loses in November. And here's the downside. If he wins in November, it will still be a pardon-palooza because then he's untouchable.
But if he loses and Biden wins, and what you want to happen, Glenn, is for there to be, we all want to happen, is for there to be justice and for people to be held responsible for the horrific crimes and abuses that they committed under the Trump administration. But what you're telling me now is, even if you're the attorney general for Biden, and I hope you are, then you can't go after them because he pre-pardoned them.
I have a plan for this.
Oh, well, go ahead, Senator Warren.
Thank you. So there are two responses to that. The first is Trump and everybody else can still be charged by the state courts and the state jurisdictions because president can only pardon federal charges, not state charges. But here's even the better fix for this. Let's say Trump pardons Roger Stone, and then Trump leaves office in January after being defeated in November. If you bring additional charges against Roger Stone, I'm going to set aside the double jeopardy issue, too much to get into right now. If you charge somebody who has been the recipient of a corrupt pardon, then I think a judge will vitiate that pardon, will say it was not a lawful act because a president shouldn't be able to. There's no precedent. But you know what? The only way you make precedent is to bring the first case, and I've done it before in D.C. A corrupt pardon cannot be given to a president's co-conspirator, co-actor, aider, and abetter. And the courts, I think, will vitiate that kind of a pardon and allow charges to go forward. I could be wrong, but there's only one way to find out. It's after Trump issues corrupt pardons and leaves office, we bring charges against those people. It can be done.
Okay, one more issue I want to get to with you today, and it is you've made a video about this, a great commentary on your YouTube channel, and people should search for Glenn Kirschner if you're listening to my podcast. And it's who is Justin Walker?
Justin Walker is a 30.
You need to take some time to calm down.
I'm doing a little bit of yoga in place, trying to bring my blood pressure down. So Justin Walker is a friend and associate and acolyte of Mitch McConnell. He is 37, 38 years old presently. He graduated. He's a judge at the moment in Kentucky, and I'll get to that. He graduated law school in 2009. He taught legal writing for a few years in a law school in Kentucky. And Mitch McConnell had Trump nominate him for a federal district court judgeship in Kentucky. The ABA rated him not qualified.
American Bar Association.
Yeah. And of course, Mitch McConnell crammed him down the throats of the American people on a party line vote after a truncated Senate confirmation hearing. That, Pete, is horrendous because that is Mitch McConnell sort of completely soiling the federal bench, the federal courts, with people who are ideologues but are unqualified to serve as judges. The man's never tried a case in his very young life. But it even gets worse. After being now, this was in late 2019. After being a judge for a few months, Mitch McConnell has convinced Trump to nominate him again, this time for the prestigious District of Columbia Circuit Federal Court of Appeals as an appellate judge. Now, Pete, this is a court. All of the federal circuit courts are prestigious, frankly, and I'm not making fun. But, you know, D.C. is kind of unique because of its jurisdictional mandate, the cases that it handles, the intensely political cases. This is a court that has had lions of the legal profession sitting. And I'm talking about conservative lions, too. This is not politics, okay? They've had the Scalias on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Roberts, and the Borks, and the men who you can disagree with their ideology, but they were lions in legal circles.
Well, they had the credibility. They were judges, and they,
and the experience and the temperament for the most part. So the fact that he is now trying to put this upstart, and again, he's been rated by the American Bar Association as equally not qualified for this appellate court position. And next week, Pete, McConnell is calling all the senators back in. So instead of focusing on our national health emergency, he wants to hold a confirmation hearing so he can get his young acolyte, Justin Walker, now installed on a higher and, frankly, one of the most important appellate courts in the country.
What is the precedent? What is the precedent for? Like, my understanding is the American Bar Association is very nonpartisan, and when they issue these ratings about not qualified, it's literally just about kind of your resume and what you've done. Yeah. So whether it be a Republican president, Bush, or a Democrat, Obama, what is the precedent for the ABA rating their nominees as unqualified?
Yeah, so one of the most important criteria is experience. It has nothing to do with ideology. Now, and people all, I'm sure, have their own views about the ABA and whether it's partisan or not. And I'm not going to get into that. And I don't have a strong feeling one way or another. I think it's a pretty fair body. But one of the minimum requirements in order to be qualified to serve as a federal judge and decide the weightiest issues of the American people who are litigants in their courts is you have to be a practicing attorney at least 12 years. I mean, this young man graduated law school in 2009 and has done, he has taught legal writing at a law school. The man is so thoroughly unqualified, even on the most basic of criteria.
Wow.
So, but again, there's always good news, Pete. And I think the good news is there is also a way, I have a plan to attack this as well. We all saw Brett Kavanaugh testify, right? We saw him lie in real time over and over and over again. Now, admittedly, it was on a lot of the sexual escapades when he says, I signed my letters F, 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 because one of my friends stuttered nonsense. The devil's triangle's a drinking game. Nonsense, nonsense, nonsense. Whatever he, hit the Christine Blasey Ford thing. I didn't believe any of it. But here's the thing. All of these unqualified judges who have been nominated and crammed down America's throats by Mitch Mcconnell. I'm not saying Kavanaugh was one of the unqualified ones, but he was one of the ones who was not straight with Congress during the confirmation hearings. Right. All of these transcripts of their testimony before the Senate in their zeal to get confirmed for these lifetime appointments, I promise you, there will be misrepresentations, mischaracterizations, half-truths, and perhaps some outright lies. That's perjury. All we need to do is have the FBI, and this is not partisan, and this is not inappropriate, have the FBI review those transcripts for lies, because we all know Trump has not allowed the FBI to do full background investigations of these judges because he's trying to help Mitch Mcconnell cram ideologues through who are not qualified. They can be dislodged come January. All we have to do is find the perjury in their transcripts, not setting them up. If they lied, they need to be held accountable and they need to be removed from the bench. That's how we unpack the courts of McConnell.
One of your videos is smart to, it's focused on Bill Barr's lie, and you remind us of that clip when Senator Kamala Harris smartly asked Bill Barr if the president, I forget exactly what the question, had asked him to do something, and Bill Barr was caught, and you could see it. So You're talking about you're talking about Kavanaugh, you're talking about other judges committing perjury in front of the United States Senate. What about the Attorney General and what he did there?
He has to be held accountable, because you could see the lies during his testimony when Senator Kamala Harris was questioning him. I've seen that lie a million times in interrogation rooms. He was asked by Senator Harris, has the president or anybody at the White House ever suggested that you open an investigation into somebody, which a president shouldn't do. Normally we have a separation between the president and the Department of Justice. And he said, suggested. I'm grappling with the word suggested. Really? You're a smart guy, Bill Barr. You don't have to grapple with the word suggested. And then, in my opinion, he committed perjury, because he went on to say, in response to her pressing him, did anybody suggest you open an investigation? You know what he said? I don't know.
Right.
Well, you know what? I don't know is not a perjury-proof answer, Pete. If you answer under oath, I don't know, and you do know, that's perjury. And he knew. He was in those meetings. He knows Trump asked him to open investigations on people. If I testified under oath that I don't know what my middle name is, I don't know doesn't make me perjury-proof, because I do know. So Barr also has to be held accountable for all of his misconduct since he's been AG.
Well, let's see how honest you are, Glenn Kirschner. What's your middle name?
Lewis.
Oh, dear.
L-O-U-I. What do you mean, what's yours, Pete?
James.
Oh, you made that up, didn't you? Let me see your driver's license.
It is. I'm not going to hold up my driver's license to the camera, but Glenn Lewis Kirschner.
Glenn Lewis Kirschner.
That was
you're
my
excellent. Dad's name, so thanks for making fun.
So sorry. Named that. I don't know why I was so judgmental of it. Let's see. GLK. Well, can't make fun of that. Thank you so much for joining me. This is really, really important work that you're doing. I'm psyched that you launched the YouTube page, and I miss seeing you on MSNBC and all the rest of the legal commentary that we've lost due to the coverage, and we could do media criticism another time of the pandemic. But it's really important that we keep hearing your analysis, and I'm so thankful that you joined me here and that you're doing the YouTube channel. And how often are you putting those videos up?
I'm trying to do it every day now because
Great.
the criming is coming fast and furious. So the YouTube is Glenn Kirschner and the Twitter is Glenn Kirschner 2.
Awesome. Thank you as always for joining me, and hopefully I can rope you into doing this regularly. And I really greatly appreciate your service as well as your time with me here. Thanks, Glenn.
Same here. Thanks, Pete.
Huh? How about that? Is that guy worth it or not? Glenn Kirschner spent 30 years trying cases for the federal government as a prosecutor. What a fascinating career. Next time I have him on, I think I'm just going to interview him about his career because it's so unique what he did for so long. It's the thing of movies and TV shows, and he's just very willing to talk about it, and I've grown to like him quite a bit. So that was fun. I hope you appreciate that. Let's now get to something that's really a different kind of fun. Very funny, huh? How about that? J.L. Kovan is a very funny comedian who has had a lot of trouble getting his career off the ground, which has always been weird to me because he's so good. But he also had a great job, and you're never supposed to have a good job. And he's a Georgetown-educated lawyer, so he had that to fall back on. But he's got like 4 albums. He's got a new album coming out today, which is what we're here to promote. And I hope you'll go buy it and support him because I always want you to buy the things that my guests are selling if you can, because it's just obviously a great way to support them and appreciate them for joining me. And JL has been joining me for years now, and he's just absolutely blown up, exploded onto the scene when he posted his Trump impression, which he was doing for a while. But one of the bits he did just absolutely hit and exploded with millions of views. He's now been on the Howard Stern Show, and he's got a brand new album that we talk about that I hope you'll get. It's called Fireside Craps Part 2, and it's really funny, as I'm sure you will find out right now. And after this aired, we did this live on Twitter, and at least one person always seemingly falls for the voice and actually thinks it's Trump. That's how good it is. It used to happen all the time on the show. People would call in thinking they were actually talking to Trump, and it was bizarre. And now some woman told us on Twitter that her husband overheard this interview and was disgusted with Trump. Here it is right now, J.L. Kovan's Donald Trump, and then we'll get to the actual J.L. Kovan, who's not nearly as interesting as his impression.
And now if their most famous people are not succeeding, it looks bad for me. So I want to get them back. It's called getting back to work. We need our country back.
Okay, I've been wanting to ask you.
How many African Americans do you employ?
I don't employ any black people.
Well, okay. Well, then maybe with, that beard and your kind of alt-right look, maybe we need to look into you a little bit.
I don't think we do. But
Well, we'll see.
We're not. There's nothing to see. When you use phrases like "we'll see," and you also do this thing, and I want to ask you about this. You often, Mr. President, say, "as you know," and it's followed by something I don't know because it's not true. Do you realize that's not fair for you to say "as you know" followed by a lie or something that's
see. As you know, I have a very large penis, and the issue there is that
I can't believe
it's clearly like an angry jealousy of my greatness that you're kind of doing right here. Because
I don't think it
as
is.
you know, I always tell the truth.
I don't even think you're having sex, not with your wife and not with anybody else. I don't think you are. I don't think anybody wants to fuck you, Mr. President.
Well, the wife part might be true.
Okay, so let me ask you about a couple of other issues from the week. Of course, it's reported that you went off on your campaign manager, whatever his name is, Brad Pascal, and that you even threatened, because the poll numbers he was telling you about were not what you wanted to hear, that you even threatened to sue him.
This is unbelievable. Obviously, you're probably reading from one of the great fake newspapers. And the issue is Brad Pascal has done a tremendous job for me. One of the great jobs. We beat Crooked Hillary and her big machine, so Brad knows what he's doing. And I didn't threaten to sue him. That's like one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. What I did do was say, if you continue to do a bad job, okay, and these should be executive privilege, by the way, discussions in the White House. I said, if you'd continue to do a bad job, I will bring you to court. Never said lawsuit, never said sue. That's fake news.
What do you mean you'll bring him to court? For what?
We're gonna bring him to court. We're gonna take him to court.
Okay, moving on. This week, the country passed a horrific milestone, which is 1 million cases of COVID-19. And, of course, that's on your watch. You were asked earlier this week by a reporter named Olivia Nuzzi what you thought if a president who had more deaths in the time period you've had than the entire Vietnam War should be reelected, sir. You didn't give an answer to her, and now we're at 1 million contractions of this horrible virus. Do you take any responsibility?
Yeah, I take responsibility for the fact that we don't have 1 million deaths. So I take full responsibility for the fact that
60,000 deaths. What about that? Do you take responsibility for any of the 60,000 people, Americans who have died?
Well, no. Why would I take responsibility for that? I have stopped a lot of deaths. We couldn't make it zero. We couldn't keep it to zero. Nobody could do that. God couldn't even do that. So, and he tried. Believe me, he was trying, and he didn't do it. Obviously, we got a lot of deaths. But the key is we could have had 1 million, maybe even 2 million deaths. We've got 60,000. That's all sad. That's a sad thing. We don't like that. One death, too many. But 60,000, when history looks back on this isn't going to be Vietnam. And by the way, my Vietnam was going through the 80s and not getting an STD.
Yeah,
that was so. This is like my I'm like the only person to have 3 Vietnams. I had the 60s, the 80s, and the 2020s. But we're doing a great job. We're doing a strong job. No, it's
terrible job.
No, in fact, they said 1 million people. It's 60,000, and only Dems like you would say, "Oh, that's how could you?" Yes, I take full responsibility for the 940,000 lives that I saved, and I hope Spielberg is making a movie. Right. We can call it Trump's List, okay? And we're going to list all the people who didn't die. And we're going to call it Trump's List.
Horrible.
No, it's actually called a great thing.
Yesterday, it's a terrible thing. Yesterday, you said that you were actually feeling jealous about how much attention and fame Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx have been getting. Do you realize how horrible that is seen to most of us, that the most famous person in the world is jealous that scientists might be getting too much attention under his watch?
Are you aware
anybody,
this beverage?
Anybody's getting.
Excuse me. Are you aware of this beverage? It's called Coca-Cola. Have you heard of Coca-Cola?
Sure.
It's pretty famous. Probably the most famous beverage in the world.
Right.
They spend more on advertising, okay? More dollars on advertising than any other company.
Okay.
Because it's about maintaining, it's called dominance. It's called presidential dominance. So I am maintaining that because it's important that I have a strong platform. And when you have people like Birx with their scarves and Fauci, the Hobbit, we call him Dr. Hobbit behind his back.
Do?
Well, I call him on your show as well. So maybe it's not behind his back, although believe me, I doubt he listens to your little show. And the fact is, it's got to be presidential dominance. It can't be the Fauci and Birx show. Okay, this isn't a TNT medical drama. Fauci and Birx. It's called Donald Trump, total presidential domination.
It's a terrible answer. But I know I've got time for 2 more questions, one of which is you spent the last 24 hours really just tweeting about people on television and the Russia investigation and exoneration of Michael Flynn. And it's pretty weird that you're doing that, what with the crisis that is happening. Why are you so obsessed with criticizing people on TV when, in fact, you're only giving them attention and elevating their profiles, by the way?
Because sometimes you can't let people get away with it. You can't worry about like, oh, they're going to get more tweets if I mention them. Sometimes you have to do the strong thing. It's called the strong thing. And I am doing it, and I'm doing it strongly. And Michael Flynn is a great man. This is a great patriot.
He was working
for
another foreign country as a foreign agent while he was working for you. Turkey. He wasn't, I don't believe, registered as well. He's working for another country, which is not exactly our best friend in the world. I mean, how do you square that?
He's a hardworking guy. He works like most people can't even work for one country. Right. Look at James Comey. He's out of a job. But Michael Flynn was doing, it's called double duty. He was such a strong guy and doing great things. And it's disgusting, and it's honestly a disgrace that you or anybody else would criticize him.
This week was your wife's 50th
birthday. What did you get her?
Who?
Melania, the first lady. It was her birthday this week.
Well, here's the thing. People don't seem to realize this because we're all going through great sacrifice. Yeah. Okay. It's called shared sacrifice. I may not be sick. I'm staying very healthy, very strong and very healthy. But the idea of me having to be with a 50-year-old, I have walked through the hospitals, okay? No mask. I have walked through the hospitals and seen these people. And it's a horrible death. But I had a guy on his deathbed. And when he found out that I was still married to a woman who just turned 50, he said, I wouldn't trade places with you. And so we're all going through very tough times. Okay. It's not easy. And I can't golf as much. Right. Only 9 holes now. They don't let me do the full 18.
Is that right?
And, so we're all dealing with really tough things. It's tough, but we're going to get through it.
Yeah, tough and strong. Finally, how do you explain not wearing a mask? And more importantly, we saw this week your vice president went to the Mayo Clinic, and he was the only person without a mask. Does he have to leave the mask off so that he can gargle your testicles at any point?
Short answer is yes, but the long answer is his mask, okay? He doesn't wear a mask unless he can also wear the accompanying ball gag. And they didn't have those at the Mayo Clinic. So he said, no ball gag, no mask. And I respect that. That's like called principles. But I don't want to wear a mask. I know Crooked Hillary would probably be wearing like 5 masks behind like a plexiglass window, showing the world how weak we are. Very weak. If I show up there very tall, very fit, very strong, no mask, the world can see America's leader is tough and strong, and we can have confidence. If I show up there, with like a bubble boy suit, as I'm sure you would probably want, looks very weak. Looks weak for me, looks weak for the country.
All right. Well, I don't think anything that you said here was good or honest or fair or right, but I appreciate you joining me. And if you could leave and go get my friend J.L. Kovan, I know he's hanging out there sometime. Thank you very much. Not good to see you, I hope.
Failed comedian. It's your turn.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, no, it's your turn. Okay, not funny. Terrible impression. Hey, guys.
Hey.
Get out of here, Donald.
There he is. Give him a pat on the butt and a tussle his hair. And thank you very much, JL, for doing this with me and joining me. And again, is it hard to transition out of the Trump support? I see your face is still doing Trump.
No, it's not. I feel I can purge it pretty quickly. Okay. I'm just thankful for everybody on social media telling me that the impression is the greatest impression they've ever heard, and here are 5 suggestions and 2 script ideas to make it better.
So I want to ask you, get an update on your progress since you went absolutely viral. You now have millions of views on YouTube, and before your video, your Easter Trump video, you had about 4,000 followers on Twitter. Now it's like 84,000. You have surpassed so many comedians that you weren't, quote, as successful as. You were on Howard Stern. You're going to be hopefully back on Howard Stern again. You've got a new album, Fireside Craps, that drops tomorrow. I just tweeted about that earlier. Things seem to be going great. What else do we need to know about your progress? Are you feeling good?
No, it's an odd thing. I actually feel. Well, the problem is I'm still working. Obviously, like tweets and podcast appearances doth not pay the rent.
You're getting paid for like private appearances, aren't you? To be
yeah.
I mean, how much? He's available, ladies and gentlemen. For how do people get a hold of you? At JL Kovan.
Yes. The thing is, the reason I say that is because I'm just simply feel like I'm working 2 jobs now. Like I'm making more money. I made more money this month than I've made in any month in my life.
Doing
both working for a law firm and also all this generous money that's been coming in for shows.
He's a Georgetown
and for
educated lawyer, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. But it's stressful because I have to maintain both. 1 month of like viral success doesn't mean I'm going to have the career I want. I hope I'm headed that way, but instead I end up doing like 7 hours of comedy related work a day and 8.5 hours of legal work in a day. And I'm like constantly on edge. It's a good thing. I would just like to know, I'm hopeful that a year from now, maybe I am just a comedian and I'm booking lots of gigs and able to make everything from that.
Is it difficult? I've never gone through what you're going through, but this is what I want to say. Like, is it hard knowing that talking to you is not nearly as funny or entertaining as talking to your Trump impersonation? Like, I was having so much fun, and I'm still like talking to you, but it's like I almost want to go back.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I fear is going to happen to my entire comedy career. People are going to go, and I've told you, maybe I told you off mic, but I said, I don't see any conceivable way that I continue doing Trump in 2021 if he wins. If he loses, I will mock him and his fan base till the day I die. But if he wins, it feels like morose at that point, and it's no longer dark humor. It's just dystopian.
You don't feel like you wouldn't want to continue doing the impression and the parody if he gets reelected?
No, it just doesn't feel, and it doesn't feel good. It wouldn't feel good because it's like this would say something so fundamentally flawed about our country in sort of a permanent way, not in a we made a mistake, but in a no, we didn't make a mistake. This is who we are, our system, our structure. This is what it produces. But I'm hoping I wrote a new special. And I'm hoping to perform that, and it will involve no Trump. So that'll be either the end of my career, or we'll get people excited about me, the comedian, beyond the one of 25 impressions that I've done.
So you've got a new album. It drops tomorrow for those that are watching live on Twitter, and today.
It can be pre-ordered, if I may. It can be pre-ordered now on iTunes. It's Fireside Craps The Deuce. Fireside Craps 1 from 2017 is also available and is only $4.99 on iTunes, but the new one is available for pre-order and is out on Amazon and iTunes tomorrow.
You interrupted me and took over the plug.
Yeah.
I had it all right. I was about to get to it.
You were really Fauci Berksing that one, and I thought I needed to come in and just give a more strong and tremendous plug.
What did you think? You made you've been making these videos and doing this impression for a couple of years, and it's always been great to me and folks who've heard you, but you went viral with the kind of the Easter Sunday video, really exploded. Did you think, like, when he lays an egg, you're great at getting on it, and so are so many other comedians and analysts and critics, but when he did the drink the bleach disinfectant Lysol thing last week, whatever he said there exactly, like, where were you when you heard that? What was your reaction? And as someone who's a hilarious comedian and does the best impression of him, were you like too easy? Like,
yes, thank you. See, and thank you. You get it because I said to my girlfriend, I got message after message online. You've got to do a bleach video. And in my head, I'm going, the reason you know me, the reason why you find me funny is I'm not, all due respect to SNL, which does a lot of good stuff, but their political stuff tends to be a recitation of what Trump has already said with like one or two extra lines. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not there to recite funny things he said. I want to put my own spin on it. And I tried to, but the demand was so pent up. And then a website paid me to basically do a video. And I said, oh, okay, fine. I'll do a work for hire. Yeah. And it blew up, not like Easter, but it was the second most successful video I did.
Oh.
And I was so because he says, I didn't say disinfectant. I said diet fresca. If you notice how the bubbles don't have the virus. It was a long thing like that. And he claimed that he had never known anybody named hydrochloroquine. Is that a black woman?
Yeah.
But in other words, yes, you are exactly right. It is exactly why the impression has gotten good is that I didn't go for that. That's what everybody goes for. But I did it because somebody paid me to do it. And I thought, okay. And then it was a big hit. And I thought that's the balance of like, trust yourself. Artistically, I trust myself, but sometimes your fans want something else also. Like you can give them the genius and you can give them the McDonald's Happy Meal that they're also craving.
Well,
if that doesn't sound pretentious enough of my 3-week-old fan base that I already have some contempt for.
How'd it go? That's hilarious. How did it go on Howard? What was that like? Were you nervous?
I was extremely nervous, but not because of Howard, all due respect. I've done big shows, I've done TV, so it's not like I was like, oh my God. I had to do it at 7:20 in the morning. And previous to that, your show at like 11 a.m. was the earliest I was doing the impression with any regularity.
What does the time have to do with it?
No, because my voice when I wake up, it is an impression. It requires like a certain, roughness to the voice. I have to be kind of awake. And when I wake up, I have that morning
You're like a
bass.
goddamn opera singer. I've never heard a comedian talking about his voice. It's hilarious.
You've also never heard an impression that good. I'm sorry if the hacks you're into offer up B+ garbage for the masses. This is Peter Luger's filet mignon. This is a porterhouse at Peter Luger's.
Yeah, well, your impression is the best impression, but it's not it's not the voice and the face.
No, I know.
It's the things you're saying. The fact that you actually had an answer for me when we were just talking as Trump for everything, completely unrehearsed, including my question about how you use certain turns of phrase, and that that's why you're so good. All right, let me ask you.
But I will just to clear it up. The nerves was because I really care about the quality, like any pretentious artist, and. For about 5 minutes, we were on for like 20 minutes, but for the first 5 minutes, it didn't sound right to me. And that became like a reinforcing loop where I got nervous because I was like, I don't think it sounds that good, but they were laughing and I'm being asked back. So that's
awesome.
That's a good sign.
I also, though, when you used to come on the show, we did mostly just have a conversation because I actually have a great deal of respect for your analysis on politics. I think you're a highly intelligent guy and you're as good of a pundit on politics as anybody you see on CNN or MSNBC. So,
by the way, how good does Jay Inslee look right now? I feel like Nostradamus. Like he has not only did he look good on the issues of the time, and now he's gone through the crucible and come out the other side looking like a strong, competent, science-based leader. Yeah. And I'm so mad. I know you're not a Biden guy. I mean, I hope you're gonna vote for him, but like I understand.
No, I'm thinking about Jesse Ventura or Justin Amash or
okay, cool.
Or Oscar the Grouch, maybe anybody but Biden, because Biden's just the same as Trump, and Biden isn't actually a progressive, and Biden has been accused of sexual assault as well, and Biden. Blah, 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 blah.
Right. And trust me, you don't have to be a fan of Biden, but the fact is if Jay Inslee, by some miracle, were our nominee right now, I think you'd be gearing up for an electoral landslide. And I mean that. I'm not saying that because
you don't think
that
would have been the case with, say, Elizabeth Warren?
Well, no, and I'm going to say, to be frank, I think obviously I would have voted for Elizabeth Warren. I think she had many good ideas. I think she's still a woman, and she still will have some of that sexism. I don't think it would be as ingrained as with Hillary, but there's going to be. It's Jay Inslee to me is if you like Elizabeth Warren's policies, but you want a younger, less problematic, less gaffe-prone Biden figure, like a nice-looking, older white guy, but who has all the right ideas and no scandal and has shown himself now. I think if he were the nominee and you saw him coming through this, people would have been like, oh, my God, like this is the guy. Like he's literally contrasting directly with Trump's ineptitude on the exact same real-time issue.
What is your concern about, or I'm assuming you have some concerns, most people do, about the election itself? Trump will cheat no matter how, and he doesn't even care if it's out in the open. He'll do whatever it takes to cheat, to win, by taking help from a foreign country, by suppressing the vote, by whatever it takes. Any con artist who comes in and says this is how you're going to win, there's a lot of concern that he's going to do all kinds of things to cheat. What are your concerns about the November election? As the Hannibal Lecter profiler to Donald Trump's psyche, I feel like I should write a small book, for like $2.99 and print it, and it's called What Donald Trump Will Do. Donald Trump is going to get trounced by Biden, barring a miracle. I really think that. I don't mean like a Ronald Reagan 1984 trouncing, but I mean like a decisive electoral college victory. In Virginia and Michigan, Biden outdrew Obama's numbers from 2008 in those states because I think there really is a thirst and a hatred for Donald Trump. Like there really is, like he is he's got to go. Biden, sure. Like you're nice enough. You're not Trump. Well, you'll do an okay job for 4 years. People aren't really as much voting for Biden as they are against Trump, and some people are. I mean, I have like my closest friend is a former Republican. He changed his party affiliation after Trump got elected. He didn't vote for Trump.
He became disgusted with the party. He said it didn't matter being one of the 12% Republicans who didn't like Trump. It was like the brand, the party is tarnished. Right. It's the brand is done. And he liked Biden, I think, because he likes that sort of those are the policies he sort of likes. That's coming from a Republican never Trumper. But I will say this, what I think Trump will do is, I think, very simple. He will lose fairly decisively, but in his own mind, he's been telling himself since inauguration, I won one of the great victories of all time. You won a close electoral college win. It wasn't Reagan versus Mondale. You won a close win. In his mind, it's become a great win. He had a huge inauguration crowd. Despite numbers and photos, he had the biggest ever. He's doing a great job. He tells himself that, and he surrounds himself with people who tell him that. He has fired the people who tell him otherwise. So when this comes out with that narrative buried in his head, and then he loses by like 100 electoral votes to Joe Biden, he's going to go, clearly there was fraud. I've been warning about fraud. How could I lose to Sleepy Joe, who, to be honest, isn't even as tough a candidate as Hillary? I did a great job, and now you're telling me I lost by a huge margin? Not possible. We need to look into it. I'm not giving it up. We need a fair election. We need to know the results. I'm not going anywhere till we figure this out. We've got to get our country back.
You don't think he's going to leave if he loses?
He's going to stall. He's going to divide. He's going to possibly urge violence.
Yeah, if he loses, that lame duck session is going to be...
Our Second Amendment people need to fight for their country. I see, and I know it sounds hyperbolic. I don't think it is. No. I think he is going to go right there.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah. Well, I think that's thoughtful, and I think it's unfortunately fairly accurate. We will see. We'll see. We're going to see. Why does he do this with his hands?
And as you know, we'll see what happens.
What is this when he does that?
Well, it's like and then sometimes you got to get the hand up here, and then you get like. It's great. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
J.L. Kovan, get the new album, Fireside Craps, A Deuce. The Deuce drops on May 1st. Everywhere albums are sold. Support him so he can stop complaining that people aren't, because he absolutely deserves it. A very, very funny guy, and we love when you join me. Thank you.
And Pete, we've said this before, but I feel like at this moment, now that I've reached some sort of mountaintop, probably a small mountain, but you've been very supportive, as we've said before, but you've been very supportive from when I was just a jacked, funny, natural talent to now being a successfully famous, out-of-shape, pre-diabetic monster. You've been with me the whole way. You gave me spots on the show when I was kind of at my almost most anonymous in a weird way, when I was just a middling journeyman at that point.
Your notoriety never, your fame, anybody. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter what other people think of you. I think you're great, and I...
But you were one of the people who gave me a nice platform and then, like, replenished some fans. You know, when I was like, I have 2,000 followers. Hey, Pete had me. I got 2,300 now. That's progress. That keeps you going. In comedy, where there's not a lot of markers of positivity or fame or success, unless you are successful. You need those things, and that was obviously very helpful.
Well, your success during this horrible time is one of the bright spots. I'm very happy for you, and I'm rooting for you and cheering for you and supporting you, and I appreciate you joining me. Go buy his album, follow him on Twitter, and hire him. He'll do his Trump for your private parties, et cetera, right?
As Tina Turner said, I'll be your private Trumper.
Thank you. I don't think she said that.
Private Dancer. Was a song by her.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I could talk to his Trump forever. It's so funny to me and deeply offensive and awful, and I don't know how he is able to do that so well. But reach out to him, follow him on Twitter, buy his new album, hire him for whatever, and everybody is a winner. Okay, J.L. Kovan, thank you as always. Fireside Craps is the new album. It is out today. Go tell him you heard him here on Stand Up. And finally, for the show, I have Christian Finnegan, my good friend, stand-up comedian, writer, actor, join me every Friday to wrap up the week in news. We pick 5 or 6 stories that we go through every Friday here. And this week, we just started talking about everything but, and got into the mundane. We got into sleeping and drinking and eating and even regularity of bowel movements. And I actually really enjoy hearing conversations with other people, men and women, about some of the mundane, routine things of their life. I used to do that on SiriusXM and learn a lot. I got a lot of little tips and ideas about what I was doing wrong and could do better in the little quiet moments of your life, if you will. Here now, my conversation with Christian Finnegan. I have convinced him yet again to join me to wrap up the week with some, of course, undercovered stories. He is a hilarious and brilliant comedian. He is Christian Finnegan. I already gave the whole intro right before that. Now there I am.
I appreciate it. I'll always take a double intro.
Double intro time. We are talking.
Love that song.
I break into a song a lot lately, I feel, and I never did
just
that.
Entertain yourself.
Is it
probably because you're not hearing incidental music the way you do when you're just out and about in life? You know what I mean? Because if you're just wandering around in the city or whatever, you hear 10 songs an hour just playing out of stores and stuff like that. And so now we're just all in silence, and unless we make the active decision to put on music.
Well, let me ask you about that, because you're actually a really you know a lot, think about, talk a lot about music, and
I do,
and I don't, but I do want to ask you about your habits. Like, I find that when the music is on in my home, especially during this time, it's a game changer. Do you have any kind of rules? How much is music on? When is it on? Do you always have music on?
No, I can't really, because it gets on my wife's nerves sometimes if I have it on constantly.
Right,
I mean, unless I have headphones on. You know, like a lot of times she'll have her headphones on. If she has her headphones on, that feels like I have permission to then put my headphones on and not feel like I'm being antisocial. But yeah, I mean, I like, there's certain music for certain situations. I always listen to music when I'm going to bed at night. Like
that doesn't bother your wife?
No, with headphones. I mean, you know.
You wear headphones while you lie down on the pillow and have music on?
Yeah.
No way.
Like Bluetooth, you know.
Yeah. But what kind of music do you listen to?
Well, it depends. If I'm just like, because, you know, I have a hard time falling asleep, and so I'm usually laying in bed for at least 45 minutes before I actually fall asleep.
Every night?
Yeah, I've always had issues sleeping. And so, you know, sometimes I'll just peruse music, like just trying to find interesting stuff. But if I'm actually into like, okay, go to sleep mode, then I have, you know, there's 10 to 20 albums that I put on. There's one album that I do put on a lot that I kind of only listen to when I'm trying to go to sleep, because it becomes sort of a psychological connection, you know?
What is it?
It's a band. Well, it's one of my favorite albums, but it's a band called the Blue Nile. It's a band from the 80s, and they had this album called Hats, which is a really beautiful album, but there's something very sleepy about it, sleep inducing, but not in a boring way. So I'll put that on a lot, or I'll just kind of find something quiet and interesting. And Ryuichi Sakamoto, who's a Japanese composer, I'll put on his music, try to sleep to quite a bit.
I'm just looking this up. The Blue Nile. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because could see sleep into this, but like,
it feels like a rainy night. Every one of their songs feels like a rainy night in New York to me. Like, you know,
what is this genre?
Pop. It is pop. I mean, they were kind of they only put out an album like once every 8 years.
1989. Oh, cool. What happens when you struggle to fall asleep? Is it your mind racing with thoughts?
Well, I do drink a lot of caffeine, which it certainly doesn't help, but I've always, ever since a little kid, I had like massive insomnia when I was in high school. It was like, I would go days, and I had 3 different teachers accuse me of being on drugs, because I would not be able to sleep at night, and then I would fall asleep in class all the time. And I'd have, you know, like I had one sort of hippie English teacher, Mr. Lamb, who had like the beard and looked like he may have been at Woodstock at some point. And he pulled me out of class once, and he's like, "What are you on, man? I know you're on something. Tell me what you're on." You know, and I remember once when I was in chemistry class, our seats were alphabetical. You know, the seating chart was alphabetical. And just so happened that my chair was front row center, staring right at the teacher. And I fucking hate hated chemistry. Like I could not find anything more boring. And I remember falling asleep and I'm just like nodding off. And the teacher is just sitting in front of me, just watching me. And I'm just like, and then I remember in algebra class, I fell asleep in class and my teacher, the bell rang and my teacher quietly ushered everyone out of the room. And so I woke up and she was just staring at me, just waiting for me to wake up.
It's messed up though too, that the first conclusion, the obvious conclusion would be like, maybe this person's having trouble sleeping. Maybe something's going on at home versus drugs.
It was the 80s, man. Everybody just assumed everything was drugs, you know.
But you still struggle with that, and it's in it with falling asleep. And now is it more
staying asleep? Yeah.
Oh man, that's.
I have a hard time going to bed, but I have a very easy time going back to bed.
Oh really?
That makes sense. Oh yeah, like if it's like noon, I'll fall right asleep immediately.
I love this stuff, dude. I love to hear about people's personal, like everything mundane, because I actually think it's important, and I also think. That it makes people feel less alone, like to hear about people's you know struggles, especially when it comes to sleep or eating or a diet or weight loss or whatever. It's fascinating.
I really think that siesta culture is a healthier way to live. You know,
you'll get no disagreement from me, and arguably you might. There's a lot of data that says you're actually more productive.
Absolutely. Sleep like 5.5, 6 hours at night, and then 40 minutes in, half an hour, 40 minutes in the afternoon. I think everyone would be more productive. There's actually this app I use sometimes called Nap 26, because I guess there's some scientific research that says that 26 minutes is the perfect nap increment.
Oh, that's
because it allows you to recharge, but you don't slip into REM. And so you don't like totally fall into a K-hole, but you do kind of recharge your batteries. And so, you put on this app and it just tells you like, you're going to sleep. And then it just plays these sort of pulsing sound waves. And then after 26 minutes, it fades out and then birds start chirping and it says, your nap is over. Time to wake up.
I'm going to try that.
It's good. Nap 26. I am not getting paid by Nap. I will happily take any money that Nap 26 wants to give me.
That's really interesting. I haven't been napping lately, but I used to be pretty regular. I was actually more regular napping when I had the corporate life and getting up at 4 a.m. and being, getting home at 2. And I would take a nap and then kind of go back to work. But
because napping right now kind of feels like an admission of failure on some level.
I think that I don't know why you're saying that. I don't know why you're saying that right now, but I think it always feels that way. That there's somehow it's. I'll sleep when I'm dead, or napping makes you weak, or it's an admission of failure. But do you think it's more particular to the pandemic time?
Well, I do, in the sense that, like, I think it's super important to wear pants right now, even when you don't have to. Like, I'm not one of those people who thinks that you have to wear like a business suit. If I'm working from home, I've got to dress like I'm going into the office. Like, that's nonsense. I have a very simple guideline. I may have mentioned this to you. If you're wearing sweatpants, you have to put on real shoes, like sneakers. It doesn't have to be like shoes, but like actual shoes. If you're wearing jeans or pants, you're allowed to wear slippers.
Jesus, I think that rule resonates with me.
Yeah, because if you're wearing sweatpants and slippers, well, then your whole mindset is different.
That's generally what I'm doing. I have sweatpants and slippers, or I wear sweatpants and rubber Crocs, but they wouldn't qualify for your rule.
Yeah, no, I think actual. It's just like sneakers. It doesn't have to be,
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
Louboutins.
I actually think there's. Did you say Tretorns?
No, I said Louboutins.
Oh, I think there's a.
I don't think they make men's shoes.
I think there's something to that. I can't articulate what it would be, but yeah.
I just think that when there's no structure to life, I mean, there is no reason to not take a nap at any time. Like, if I were to say to you right now, hey, Pete, I know we said we were going to do this podcast, but I think I'm going to take a nap. You might be a little annoyed, but you'd kind of understand on some level. You'd be like, yeah. You know what I mean? And so I
do not think that. I think if you had just told me right before, like you said, we were supposed to do this at one time and you're like, I need 15 minutes. I was like, good, I actually do too. But if you had said, I need 26 minutes and specifically for my nap, I would have been like, that seems shitty. Like, you're going to take a nap right now? Like, I have another interview coming.
Yeah.
sorry, man. I
don't mind
imagine
if I just take a snooze. Or...
But I mean, I don't think I could say that to anybody but my wife, and even them. I would feel like I got to take a nap before we do a thing. But it shouldn't be wrong because it
shouldn't be wrong.
No
but I just
than
feel
meditating
like
or running or even having a meal.
When there's no structure placed, when your life has structure, you can take a nap whenever you have time, and it feels totally rational and reasonable to me. But when your life has no structure, I feel like you have to kind of fake structure. You have to fake.
Well, so are you arguing that structure is really important to have in terms of a schedule and places to be and things that you do at a certain time of day?
I think for artists, 100%. And we're all kind of living like artists right now. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, obviously, because we, not since you were doing radio, but, as comedians, we work primarily at night. And so our days, a lot of times, unless we're working on a show or, they can feel a little nebulous, a little mamby-pamby. And it's very easy for me to start playing a video game or, hey, fuck it. I got nothing to do. It's 2:00. I'm going to smoke up, but it's so hilarious.
That makes me more productive a lot of times. So.
No, with me, what happens is every time, not every time.
I'll go rake my neighbor's lawn after smoking.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I get pretty nuts. Yeah, I organize things. I clean the certain type of weed, like sativa strains make me focus and are really
I'm
helpful.
constantly trying to find those strains, and I'm never, maybe it's just my body chemistry, but I get creative a lot, but I don't get really, I will stare at a wall for 12 minutes.
I think but that's, to me, that's that's helpful because I can't stare at a wall for 20 minutes normally or sober.
Yeah,
it's an ADD type of thing. I don't know if I have ADD or whatever, but I think I probably have it to some extent. We all do. And I remember the first time I ever smoked this type of weed. I'll never forget it because it had that effect on me that focused me in a task, and nothing Christian in my life ever focused me and made me finish things. I felt.
Yeah.
And
I always should talk about that video games for me have been a very helpful psychological tool.
Really?
In the sense that when I play video games, it's the only time that I feel like I'm fully engaged in the moment. And being on stage, doing stand-up and playing video games are the only times where I feel like I'm fully in the moment. I'm not thinking about what happened an hour ago. I'm not dreading what's going to happen an hour in the future. I'm fully just engaged in the task at hand. And, because you have to be, you're just, I don't think about anything but playing video games when I'm playing video games.
Well, there's a lot
which
to
for
think
me
about.
is helpful.
There's a lot to think about in the video game.
Yes.
Your mind can't wander. You have all these different decisions that you have to make.
Do I use a shotgun here? Do I use a sniper rifle?
Yeah, that's actually why I don't play video games. I get overwhelmed by the amount of choices. Seriously. And I stopped liking video games when there became more options, more buttons on a controller.
Right.
It was overwhelming.
That makes sense.
It gave me anxiety. Like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm dead. And that's why, for me, what does that to my brain is gardening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm growing all these plants.
That's a healthier hobby, I would say. It's a more productive hobby. It's okay. I know that people want to act like video games are art, and to a certain degree they are, but gardening is probably a better hobby. I
don't know. I mean, teach their own. Whatever it takes, frankly, for you to help settle your brain and focus the way you're saying, and not have the suck creep in. I think
honestly, it's like the drug that would probably do what I want would be coke. I've never done hard drugs. I only started smoking pot in my late 30s.
Yeah.
So I didn't even start drinking until a week before my 21st birthday.
Me and you are around the same based on that.
Yeah. But I've never done hard drugs. But every time I hear people talk about doing coke, I'm like, oh my God, that's what I need. I need just something to be productive and to not question myself and to just be completely unrestrained.
Well,
but then I think about all the people I've ever met who've been on coke, and I'm like, oh, I can't be that. I can't be that.
Well, yeah, but that's probably why you like caffeine too, right? Is it similar stimulant? No.
Well, I do, and I don't drink coffee. I just don't like coffee, and so
Mountain Dew.
Right. Yeah, my Diet Mountain Dew. Well, right now I'm doing a little Coke Zero, but
you don't like coffee. That's so fascinating.
Cigarette water, as a friend of mine refers to it.
It kind of ruins it for me. I want you to, I want to delete that from my brain. I don't like that you said that.
Yeah, it's like when you pour a little water into a disgusting ashtray. That's what coffee tastes like to me.
Usually, you and I we recap the week, but I'll tell you, I do miss on the old show, we would do a lot of talking about kind of these things, kind of the more mundane things that really are very important to your lives. Because I think that people... Well, it is a lighter side, but I also think that right now a conversation like the one we're having, people hear that and go, oh, that's like me, or I relate to that, and it gives them permission from napping to drugs to whatever it takes to fall asleep and fight the anxiety. I think it's good. I think it's helpful. And I do always want to have a conversation that's not only informative and slightly entertaining, but helpful and can kind of make your life better. So I'm glad that we had this talk.
Yeah, I think that people, getting back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, the people who aren't used to being at home during the day, who are used to having an office and sort of tasks put in front of them, could probably learn something from stand-up comics in this capacity. Not that we necessarily make the best use of our day, but we have experience with being home during business days. You know what I mean? And I feel like I have some sort of coping mechanisms, and here's things to do, here's things not to do. Again, like the whole pants thing, like it's just, here's how to not just completely let go of the wheel. You know?
Yeah, there's a lot to learn there. I wonder, do you ever think about which comedians probably really have the best kind of control on their schedule and day and are really
you meet them, dude, you could name the names. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily that they're always not funny. But I mean, there's certainly comedians that we know that are like, oh my God, if your natural comedy talent was anywhere near your work ethic, you would be the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the one recludes the other. You can be an incredibly hard worker and an incredibly talented, hilarious person. You know, it's like, if you think of it like that, there's two different 1 to 10 scales. There's 1 to 10 in how just naturally funny and witty and how interesting your perspective is. And then the other 1 to 10 is how driven and business oriented you are. It's like, some people are 10s in each. Some people are 10 in one and 3s in the other. You know what I mean? And
I do know what you mean, but the two don't always work together. Meaning, if you're a creative person, your work is, in this case, to write jokes, write comedy. It's hard a lot to go and just write comedy. It's, for me, I have to have an experience or a thought, and it's very hard to make that happen artificially. So what are you supposed to do with your day other than, try to be, I don't know, have experiences that might lend itself to the humor that you want to write? It's just a hard thing to force yourself to be creative. And on the flip side is, I feel bad because I'm not being creative.
Yeah, well, it's hard right now, especially because a lot of the things that you do to kind of generate material, if you're able, is to go out and have experiences. I don't know if you've ever done the artist's way.
I had tried it. I tried it, and I still do journaling. I haven't been lately, though, but I did for months. But forced writing every morning, pages. Yeah,
the two main components of the artist's way are what you're referring to as the morning pages, which is supposed to be 20 minutes or 3 pages without picking up the pen, just right. And the other thing you're supposed to do once a week is take yourself on a, quote, artist's date, which is go somewhere by yourself with the sole intent is to sort of enrich your brain. It could be going to see a movie by yourself, could be walking through Central Park, like in the Conservatory Gardens. It could be like going to a museum. It could be going to a strange restaurant down in a part of, Queens you've never been to. But that's the whole point, is just kind of stimulate your brain with new information. Because that is also sometimes like you get so down on yourself for not being creative, but you don't ever leave the fucking house. And so, well, how are you going to, if you're not taking anything in, how do you?
Yeah, that I always tell the story about how when I've always been very focused and motivated and productive, I think, on the higher end of that scale, but not necessarily successful at it. But I've tried everything. I'm always trying to grow and get better. And I remember I first started out doing stand-up, I was like, I just don't have enough material. I don't write enough jokes. Other people have so much more. But so I locked myself in my apartment for 2 weeks to write jokes. No jokes came out because I had to have experiences. So I did the opposite and started going to a therapist just because I thought maybe something would come out of that. I went on blind dates for the first time. It was before the internet because we're that old, and to have an experience to write about. But now, putting the creative aside, yesterday, Christian, I'm so sick of running in my neighborhood because I know every house and every plant. So I just drove over to another neighborhood because all the parks are closed and ran through that neighborhood, and it was really stimulating because I'd
that's
never
great.
seen
Yeah, you
any of these
absolutely have
houses.
to do that. Yeah, 100%.
And
yeah.
I ended up feeling a little envious because I chose the bougie neighborhood.
Oh, little class envy.
Yeah, but then I had a conversation about that with a friend, and it was really helpful. So I can do it. I can handle it. Yeah. He was.
Yeah, I mean,
and my friend goes, by the way, he's like, all those people are miserable.
Yeah, that's true. That is
He's like,
true.
all they do is work to be able to afford that mortgage.
Well, that's a nice thing to tell yourself.
Exactly.
But
That's what I said.
But I also do have, and this is not really necessarily great podcast material, but if just as a comedian to comedian thing, I have little writing games that I've sort of made up for myself that help generate material.
Well, I'll do whatever you have. I'll try whatever works for you because your material, like you, I watched you do stand up last 2 weekends ago, and I was like, this motherfucker, where is he getting this material?
Just taking in the muse. No, one silly little thing, and I don't generate a lot of usable material for this, but I think of it kind of like stretching. I do a thing that I what I refer to as alphabet jokes, which is I will just go through either a dictionary or I'll just think just think any word that starts with A. The first word that comes to my mind, apple, and I'll write it down. B, bourgeois, C, corn, whatever. And I'll just write down either that or I'll actually open up a dictionary and just drop my finger and I'll write one letter for each letter of the alphabet. And then I'll give myself like 3 minutes to write a joke or something inspired by that word. And it doesn't mean that I have to write it. If it's about corn, for instance, I don't have to write literally about corn. If corn makes me think of the stupid new metal band Korn, well, that I could write about that if I wanted to. But I just take that as like an improv suggestion, like a jumping off point.
Oh, that's really good. I was wondering where you come up with some of this material that just seems so. Where did that come from? He couldn't have experienced that.
Well, you know what? I'm talking 90% out my ass here, but there's a quote. I think it was Abraham Lincoln. No, I think this was Emerson or Thoreau. It was either Emerson or Thoreau, who said, "How will I know what I think until I see what I say?" So sometimes just simply by the fact of having to write something out, you unlock like, oh, I do believe that, or I don't believe that, or that it just sort of lets you know what your feelings are about a topic.
Well, I hope there are creative people listening. I'm sure there are, because I actually feel inspired by this conversation. It makes me want to go write and try some of those exercises. Nice. That feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good. I feel a little, I feel catalyst. I feel a fire burning. Thank you, sir.
I do what I can. Also, that this dude Austin Kleon, who wrote this book called "Steal This Art," and wrote a couple. He has one book called "Keep Going," which is I'm actually reading now. It's very simple. It's mostly a lot of cartoons. It's like a good toilet book. But I don't think people use toilet books anymore now that we all have iPhones.
That's a really. Can we go off on that tangent?
Yeah, that used to be a whole industry. Do you remember whatever Dr. Uncle John's bathroom readers?
Sounds that's the cover.
There's a series of books where it was just filled with random trivia and lists and information and stuff. And the whole idea is that it was supposed to be just for while you're taking a poop.
How about this? Who doesn't look at their phone, computer, iPad, whatever, a screen while taking a dump? Who does not?
Nobody.
Barack Obama?
I think
Michelle Obama?
That should be on like the psychopath checklist. They're like, did this person kill small animals? Do they have whatever? Do they not use their phone when they're on the toilet?
Mindful shitting.
To me, that would be a red flag to me if somebody was just on the toilet, just like.
It's a mind. You got to see Christian's face. That's mindful shitting, dude.
Yeah,
it's healthy. You're in that moment and you're just there with your bowel movement.
It's mindfulness and bowel unfulness. I'm sorry.
You shouldn't apologize for that. That's fine. Do you ever, while we're talking about poo, do you ever take more than one movement a morning? Because I often will do 3, and it has a lot to do with me being home. If I wasn't home, I wouldn't do that. Like when I would go to Sirius, I did the normal one. But
That's
when I'm
another
home on
problem.
the weekend, I have
major poop issues.
You do?
Like, not issues is too strong a word, but I have never been able to standardize my pooping.
Be regular.
Yeah, never.
I used to be fascinated growing up because my dad was so regular. It was like 6:35 every morning. I would hear it. It would literally, it was like my alarm clock. It's a good idea for a bit.
Have you ever heard the story about the guy who was on Law and Order and he got fired because of his poop schedule?
What?
I was not a fan. It was either Law and Order or Homicide. A older bald guy, kind of a very much a that guy actor. I can't remember his name, but he was on the first couple seasons of Law and Order. He played like the main dude in charge, and there was like leaked documents on the Smoking Gun or one of those websites, a leaked email chain where he was constantly making the show go overtime because he would not leave his house until he had his morning poop. And then it took him like an hour to get to the studio from his home. And so they were like, well, can't you just come to the studio first and poop here so that you're ready to go into hair and makeup like right after your poop? He's like, no, I have to poop in my own I have to poop in my own bathroom.
A lot of people have that hang up.
Yeah. And so he was fired from the show because of it. There was like a back and forth and he refused to budge. And
it's a weird thing to try to have that kind of a demand as an actor. If you're on a series, you better get over your shit phobias.
Yeah, it's true.
It's so hard to land a series, and you're on a long-running series, and you're making demand like, listen, I'm sorry, I only shit at home. I don't think you get that.
No,
I don't think Chris Hemsworth gets that luxury. I think
no.
All right, maybe
that's a 12-year-old thing to say.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, do we want to do any of these stories from the week at this point? I mean, it's been.
It's up to you.
Well, there's a lot that we had prepared to talk about. So if we can get to at least one or two,
sure.
I think that one of the most interesting stories that we're going to discuss that everybody obviously can relate to and wants to know the answer to is when are our parks going to open back up? And also, how about this? Wow, how important are parks suddenly? I mean, if they weren't already important to you, especially if you live in an urban area, but even now, where I live in a suburban area, I do not like running through the streets. I miss my nature. I like being in the park. It makes a huge difference to me. When are they going to open up? Really interesting article by Matty Iglesias in Vox that we're talking about the case for reopening America's parks. What are your thoughts on it? And
I think that, I understand why they were closed. And, I was in Astoria, Queens, and I was at Astoria Park a couple days ago and are driving by, and it was a beautiful day, and the park was hopping in a way that was like a little, I was not thrilled to see how many people were there. But to me, it's just the kind of thing where it's going to happen anyway.
Such a weird thing to react to, but
I know. Oh my God, there are people in the park.
My neighbors had a barbecue. I was like, there's a bunch of people. Like, we never reacted to a handful of people other than to say, why wasn't I invited?
The pressure is going to start building. And so I feel like, in the way it is in New York, I can't speak for other places, but the way it's going to be for New York and in other sort of urban centers, nobody's going to be bringing long guns into the state capitol to demand that the government reopen. They're just going to start ignoring the laws. People are going to start congregating in parks, period. So why not get ahead of it? And put some plans in place to, try to mitigate the interaction as much as possible. But, public spaces, and especially being outdoors and everyone's so isolated, psychologically, I think people need to see other human beings. They need to feel the sun on their face. We're entering into the spring. People are going to start to get really feisty. And to me, trying to hold a 100% quarantine for too long, it's just not going to work, And so the question is the pressure release going to be allowed by the city to where people can kind of peacefully get out into the park for 20 minutes every day or two so they can feel a reasonable semblance of a human existence? Or is it going to be a chaotic and potentially violent explosion of just people being like, fuck this?
I think it'll be both. And a couple of scenarios, many that you didn't describe. I think it's going to be like we were talking about before we started taping. I think we have no idea what it's going to be.
Knows.
I just feel like the one thing it's not going to be is fisticuffs, because even if I'm mad at you for being, having a bunch of people not socially distancing. We're not fighting because I'm not going near you. That's what's a weird thing.
That's true. Yeah.
It's like you see.
But I mean, with the police, with law enforcement, but I just think that it's where things are going anyway. And so it's just, it's sort of like there has to be it can't all be the stick. There has to be a little bit of carrot as well.
But all park, I agree with that. But all parks aren't created equal either. I mean, some are vast and spacious, and others not so much. And they got a narrow trail or something like that. And this would never be foolproof by any means. But what if they did something where if your last name is between A and L, then you go out on even days? If your name is between M and Z, you go out on odd days. Just something like that to at least keep some semblance of mitigation. Finally, people with hyphenated names will take some kind of advantage for it. And I see a loophole.
Those interlopers. I never trust those hyphenated name people.
Agreed. Let's also talk about how, I think this is a really important point, that joblessness in Europe is rising far more slowly than in the U.S. during the pandemic. And, it's always, there should be a lot of caveats when comparing countries and economics and so on, but it's clear the policies that they're employing versus the ones that we are. Also, their organization, their more serious leadership in places like Germany, but the unemployment rates are far lower, and yet they have a lot of this. They have the same problem that we do. What's the difference, and what do you think about it?
Well, a lot of the social democrat, a lot of the sort of democratic social democrat. I think that's more Nazi. But no, it's National Socialism. I'm sorry. I'm very drunk right now. No, I think that
those European countries with those types of governments, they have
some of these rules in place. They have a social safety net that's just a lot, more built out than America's, and so they're a little more prepared. And I was reading the article that I sent you, and they were saying that they're kind of all taking what Germany did after the financial crisis, after 2009, where they just paid companies a lot. Like basically they paid companies 75% of their payroll, and the companies were only responsible for paying 25% of their payroll. And they did that not only to keep people, getting paid and out in the economy and spending money, but also so that when these companies were ready to go again, they didn't have to hire and retrain a bunch of strangers and start from scratch, that they would be kind of ready to jump back in. The way this is happening in America, this is going to be a nightmare. I will say a slight caveat is one of the things that article was saying is that this won't work. What Europe is doing won't work if this goes on for another 7 months. It's like there's a I picked that number arbitrarily. It's a short-term solution, hoping that things can reopen within the next 3 or 4 months. But the way America's doing it, this whole reopen the government thing. We've talked about this before. It's not what it's about. What it's about is it's giving companies the right to fire people. Is that right now nobody can get fired, and they want to be able to demand that these workers come back to work so that they can fire them when they won't. And they're also trying to save governments, state governments, from having to pay unemployment benefits. It's like, well, your job is available to you. You just decide not to go, so therefore you're denied unemployment benefits.
Yeah,
they're all just trying to shift all of the risk onto the poor, both financial. It's like pick your poison. Do you want health risk or do you want financial risk?
Yes, and it well said. And most of us are going to have both, and it shouldn't necessarily be that choice. But the president trying to at least force the workers in a meat plant to go to work, and if they don't, then they'll be punished. But they're going to be punished in terms of the health outcomes. They're going to get sick if they do.
Of course,
yeah. And I like to think that these folks now have more power than they ever had to bargain and to leverage. And get organized, these people who we paid no attention and no respect to, but now we want the meat. Well, they can walk out, and say, we're not going to do it under these circumstances. I'm not sure that the leadership is there or that they have the leverage to do it, but
these are mostly immigrants, or not maybe mostly, but large section of them are immigrants. Who knows what degree, what percentage is documented as opposed to undocumented.
Yeah.
But yeah, these people have, I mean, this is why, you do try to, this sort of Cesar Chavez, like you do try to go around and unionize these poor, often non-English speaking people to let them know that there is sort of power in collective bargaining, but that's a little hard to do on the fly right now in the middle of a pandemic. And if I'm a Central American immigrant who works at a meatpacking plant in South Dakota, if they call me back to work, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? If my family desperately needs money, it's a really horrible choice to make. And it's a choice that conservatives primarily seem very willing to make on behalf of other people. None of these people who talk about reopening the government want to go back to work themselves. They want other people to go back to work for them. They want, that lady on the news who was like, I need to get my roots done. And she pointed to her head. It's like, I need some poor immigrant person to wash my hair for, to color my hair for me. Yeah. These people are, I guarantee you, they're not going to be out at a chicken cutting, a 1,000 people long assembly line table cutting chicken legs.
Much less doing someone's nails or doing someone's hair, most likely. Yeah, no, yeah. I think that's probably a fairly accurate generalization about those who are outraged that we're not able to go to work. They're not necessarily having to go to work for themselves. They just want the services that those people would be providing. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you for saying what I was babbling about in a coherent sentence.
No, I just wrapped it up. I thought you did fine. All right, buddy. Mitch MCConnell. Let's just do that one, and then I'll let you go. Yeah. But this is Jane Meyer of the New Yorker did a really much talked about profile of Mitch MCConnell. Everybody should read it. You also shared with me a link, but my friend Sean Illing, great guy, great writer over at Vox. He does interviews basically there and prints them out. He interviewed Jane Meyer about this, and it's really, everybody needs to know. Everybody should just read her article, really, and definitely read Sean's piece with her as well. What are your takeaways from this? What do you think about this guy?
Well, my takeaway from it is, my takeaway from it is that we often try to assign lofty psychological ambitions to people because we can't believe that the truth is as ugly as it is. That we think like, Mitch MCConnell is a principled conservative who has conservative goals, and he's Machiavellian, but he's only Machiavellian because he has these sort of political aspirations. No, he's a dude who, if there's a nickel on the table, he's going to grab it. Do you know what I mean? Like, he wants power. That he just wants power, and there's really that power in and of itself is the philosophy. And I think what I took from this is really not even about Mitch MCConnell. It's what I wish that Democrats and liberals in general would understand about Republicans, especially in the 21st century, is that winning in power is the political philosophy. It's not like, if we win the presidency, we'll be able to achieve these goals. It's like, no, our philosophy is we win, you lose, fuck you. Yeah, that's what it is.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I also have been lately trying this theory out, which is actually more pernicious than power or pursuit of power and control. And I certainly think this way about someone like Donald Trump and a lot of his followers. It's the idea of no one can tell me what to do, authoritarian ideology, as well as, more importantly and more specifically, punishment. Yeah.
Nobody can tell me what to do, but I get to tell you what to do.
Well, there's that, but it's also the idea that you actually want to see the people that you beat suffer and be punished. I mean, certainly Trump has espoused this over and over. If you hit me, I'm going to hit you back way harder, which is not a hallmark of leadership, much less necessarily really effective. But it's kind of evil to me. Like, there are people that I hate and I disagree with vehemently, but I don't want their kids to get sick, and I don't want them to die and suffer. I don't want the people I disagree with, much less hate, to suffer. And I don't think that that's a liberal theory or a noble theory. I think that's just kind of an evolution. And I think there's a lot of people that share that, but I think there's a lot of, not necessarily conservatives, but certainly Trump supporters, and I don't know about Mitch MCConnell, but they really want to see people suffer.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's that Adam Serwer piece, the cruelty is the point,
yes,
which is
yes, that piece and others like it. Cruelty is the point.
That's a piece that,
if I
people will be
you,
talking about for 20 years because it says it exactly what it is. But, I look back at it and, remember the Charlie Sheen, winning, remember that from a few years ago? And we all made fun of it. We all thought it was so silly.
Winning.
Little did we know that was going to define a major political party, in this generation. That's it. Winning. That's
at
it.
all costs, no matter what.
And
it doesn't care how. It doesn't matter. It's the other, I think, quality of a lot of folks. We will win, and it doesn't matter if we cheated. As long as we win.
It's
I thought
abhorrent to not cheat. If you can cheat and you don't, then you are a cuck, essentially.
It's a good. Yeah. All right, just real quick. Rate my Charlie Sheen impression.
Okay.
Winning. Tiger blood. Winning. I can only do
It's
that
actually not bad.
word.
I can hear it.
Sergeant Elias was like two fathers between Barnes and Elias. I don't know what the line was. I lost it.
That's pretty good.
Became Johnny
do you do
Carson.
any other impressions?
That is wild stuff.
No, I do impressions of Dana Carvey's impressions.
Yeah, I used to do Bugs Bunny's imitation of Jimmy Durante when I was a kid. Someone who I'd never heard of, but I knew was it cha-cha, and he would do James Cagney. So I used to go around all the time going, "You dirty rat, you killed my brother." But I was just imitating Bugs Bunny.
I wish we hung out when we were little boys. Christian Finnegan, as always, I appreciate you joining me to wrap up the week and even more today to have the thoughtful conversation about life and how we're living it. That was good and fun, and I learned stuff from it. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
sir.
dude.
All right.
You have a great day.
You too. Christian Finnegan on Twitter at Christ Finnegan, and that is today's show. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show. Let me know who you want to hear, who I should give the regular slots out to. And thank you very much to Glenn Kirschner, J.L. Kovan, and Christian Finnegan. But mostly thank you to the paid subscribers of this show. The show is on daily. I could not do it without your support on Patreon. We have 550-some supporters, and I just want to keep building, obviously, so that I can continue to do this every single day. 2, 3, 4, 5 guests some days. So let me know who you want to hear. And tell your friends. Sign up for a subscription. There's a link to it in the show notes. Does anybody read the show notes, by the way? I kind of, most nights, I spend a lot of time writing those up. But does anybody ever go to the show notes and click the links that I ask you to? Please do. And while you're there, give the show a rating, especially if you're listening on iTunes, on the iPod app on iTunes. Okay, that's it. Talk to you next week. Have an awesome weekend if you're listening to this on Friday. Thank you very much. I love you. Be good. You're not alone.